the way that you lay out how metaphysics should be approached, which, if I'm just taking a shot at it, is that you you need to consider the abstract formalism with the empirical content of when that abstract formalism ever engages with an empirical apparatus and interpretive framework. And I really do think you do need all three. And all these attempts that we're talking about right now seem to be examples of where you leave one of those out.
Yeah. And I would, and as I've also said, I mean, it's common terminology now to talk about an interpretive framework, but I would rather just say a clear ontology, right? If you want to specify a physical theory for me, fine.
Right.
Tell me what you think exists, right? And then tell me how you're going to use some mathematics to represent it, and those two things can go together. And how you're going to represent the laws or the way it behaves, the dynamics. But the part where you tell me what the actual ontology is, people call that an interpretation, and I don't. It seems to be a misleading word. It makes it sound more optional or more philosophical or something than it should be, right? I mean, as a physicist, you're asking, yeah, tell me what the physical postulates, and the funny thing is, the string theorists in the popular presentation of string theory were perfectly good at this, right? They would say, oh, here's the hypothesis. Ultimately, it's all strings. And gee, the difference between an electron and a quark is they're both strings and they're just vibrating differently, right? And you at least you understand, oh, that's what you're saying everything is made of, right? And these strings come together and they form these sheets and blah, blah, blah. Okay. To me, that's a story I can understand. Now there's going to be lots of details, and maybe when you get into the details, it doesn't work out quite the way you were expecting and so on. But at
But I
least
mean, that's
you have a basic understanding what you're trying to do.
yes, you have conceptual clarity, and then fields can go away because science is hard work. But at least you know what you're trying to do. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, there is a lot of confusion with that folks don't understand the difference between a mathematical formalism and an interpretation or an ontology of it. Um, do you think that now? Do you think that now just the foreground of that is quantum mechanics, or do you see that problem throughout physics?
Well, I mean, the biggest problems are, of course, in quantum mechanics as it exists now, because if you shive off space-time theory just to general relativity, okay, so you're kind of leaving behind, strong and weak nuclear forces and so on. But if you just kind of take a standard graduate level course in general relativity, and you understand the theory, which is okay, that's a big deal, but but it is comprehensible. I mean, I think general relativity, if you say, well, there's space-time, it has a certain geometrical structure, the rest of matter is somehow represented in this stress energy tensor. Okay, it gets a little vague at that point, or you think that looks a bit like leaving out too much detail. I mean, can I really pack it all into the stress energy tensor? But okay, and here's how the stress energy tensor interacts or plays a role in determining the geometry of space-time. And now let's look at all the space, kinds of space-times you could get out of this and how you would explain, various cosmological phenomena. I think that's all quite comprehensible and quite clear. Now, it may not be right, and it may be that's, at a certain level of description lying underneath that. And in order to unify that with quantum theory and with the actual detailed theory of matter, there'll be changes. But at least on that side, I think a good textbook, it's a really good textbook will explain that to you. If you go through Misner, Thorne, and Wheeler, or if you go through Wald carefully, you can get that. and those authors understood, I think, a lot of the detail, a lot of the mathematics, and they had the basic physical picture in their head correctly. But if you pick up any standard quantum mechanics textbook, there just isn't a clear physical picture there.
Right.
So yeah, most of the problem is arising on the quantum mechanical side. Absolutely.